Hey guys, this is Alan, aka the guy formerly known as GameLark, aka Psychotrip. Still going to call me GameLark, but yes,
You will
this.
always be GameLark to me. Hey guys, Trip here. Still known as Trip from the channel Psychotrip. We talk about video games, RPGs, fantasy, nerdy stuff, you know.
Yeah, and this is kind of a special episode because it's probably I don't know. It's an episode that it's tough to do, but basically kind of explaining why I'm stepping down from GameLark. So Psychotrip, feel free to jump in at any point and offer, questions or thoughts or anything, because I'm kind of going to try and tell the story of GameLark if I can and why I've decided to leave, essentially.
All right, sure. I mean, like this is just like the YouTube Heroes thing was kind of my episode. This is your episode as far as I'm concerned. I'm here for emotional support.
Thank you. um, so I guess the best way to start is to explain how GameLark started and why I even came up with the idea and why I even pursued it. And at the time that I was started GameLark, I actually was writing a lot. I do a lot of creative writing. I've been writing since I was like, I don't know, 14, 15, maybe even earlier than that, just for fun, mostly during the summers. And anything from like bad Star Wars fiction or bad Star Wars fan fiction to James Bond fan fiction to, I think I even had like a Land Before Time fan fiction at one point. But basically, I was discouraged with writing. And I actually had been to a writing retreat. I can't even remember what year it was. It was a couple years ago, I think. And I went there thinking, okay, I'm going to learn what I need to, and I'm going to become a professional writer. And the reason I was pushing myself so hard to become a professional writer is that I really didn't like my job. So I thought, well, I'll just put a lot of time and energy into becoming a writer, and I'll just do it. I'll just become a professional writer. But what I realized from going to that retreat was that I had a lot more work to do. And I just kind of got discouraged, and then I was like, I'm not even doing it for the right reason. So for a long period of time, I just wasn't doing anything kind of creatively or with hobbies. And I wanted to get back into the YouTube world because I enjoyed doing that with a friend of mine for a previous channel. And I just didn't have the right idea. I knew that if I was going to have a channel, I had to have like a good focus, like content that I wanted to feature, that it wasn't just, me dicking around. It was something focused and something that I thought was important. And I just so happened to think, well, I really enjoyed making playlists on like Spotify, and I just enjoyed discovering music in general. And I realized that there was this whole big community of video game cover artists, but there wasn't really too many channels besides like OC Remix and Game Chops, and Material wasn't even around at that point. So there weren't too many places where you could get these covers and find new artists. So I thought, well, I'll do that. And I started by making playlists. So that was the initial phase, that was the initial concept of just creating playlists, picking out my favorite remixes for certain series, and just building it from there. So then I realized that there was, the only way to kind of build an audience and following and create my own little community is actually to have original content. But the problem is I'm not a musician. I've done music here and there, but I've never pursued it. I'm just not very good at it. I just kind of dabbled in it. So I thought, well, I could do interviews. That's something that would be cool. And I reached out to a friend of mine, Minta, and I knew him from a previous, YouTube thing. And I said, you make covers. Would you be willing to let me do an interview to just kind of kickstart this thing? And he said yes, and it really took off from there. So I guess like the first phase of GameLark was just strictly, playlist interviews, strictly focused on like all the content was basically for people that were fans of video game remixes, mostly remix artists themselves, because they were the ones that were interested in learning more about their favorite, cover artists. So that's the first phase. Like I said, feel free to jump in at any point because I don't want to just
cool.
talk this whole episode.
I'm enjoying this epic story of yours.
So again, let me see where to go from here. Basically, I started doing interviews. I started doing QAs. It was kind of fun. I think I always enjoyed like the beginning of a project because it's exciting. You don't know where it's going to go. There's that like uncertainty to it. It's exciting. Even with writing, I'm kind of bad about that. Like I like to start stories and I'm bad about finishing them. But with this project, I just wanted to see where I could take it. And, I continued interviewing people and it kind of built a small following. And, I met a lot of really cool people. I mean, I can't even list them all, but like High 209, Swiggles RP, just a lot of cover artists, Soundal VGM covers, people that I kept in contact with because I always, when I was doing these interviews, I always felt like, I wish that there was a way I could, get back in touch with, like I could do a project with these people, because I felt like it was like a one and done deal. Like I would talk to them and then we kind of chat, but I was always like, man, I wish I could bring them back for another project or something like that. And I think I started GameLark in March, and then around July, August, an artist, Soundal VGM covers, reached out to me, and he was kind of part of it. An MCC, not an MCN, but a multi-channel community, which doesn't really have any of the, I don't want to put it down, but it doesn't really have any of the perks that an MCN does. They don't do like advertising or anything. They just kind of offered, graphic support, and they kind of put you on their website, and essentially it was just kind of like a hookup. And he came to me and he was like, I've been kind of dissatisfied with this MCC. Have you thought about doing something similar? And I had no experience or idea how to go about doing that, but I thought, why not just do a quote unquote record label and get some artists together and make some albums and just go from there. You know what I mean? I wasn't really thinking like, let's create an MCC. It was more, well, what could I do? And that was, find a bunch of artists that want to get together for an album. And that's how the first album came out. And I really didn't know if anyone would be on board. I knew a few people might, but we ended up having like 19 artists. And so I was really excited. I licensed it. It got pulled because of Nintendo tracks. That's a whole different story. Fuck. Yeah, I learned a lot from that album, mainly that Nintendo is super particular about their IPs.
A lot of my friends are going to be mad with what I'm about to say, but I mean, I feel like I've pissed off a lot of people with these episodes. I'm just going to say it. Fuck Nintendo.
Yeah.
I love their games. Like I'm wearing a Legend of Zelda t-shirt right now, but fuck Nintendo and their bullshit for YouTubers. But anyway.
No, continue. Please. That is, I've heard a lot of reasons for it. I heard that they almost lost their trademark at one point, and I don't know. They almost lost their trademark, so they're really protective of their IP. It doesn't really matter. They treat their fans like shit. Sega is the opposite. Sega always encourages fan projects. Nintendo just goes around and shuts them down.
But then to be fair, I mean, Sega sucks in other ways. Have you played a Sonic game lately?
Well, that's a whole different story. So Nintendo makes great games, but they're terrible at community stuff. But the point is, we did the first album. It didn't stay in stores very long, but I was proud of it. And I thought, you know what? Let's try this again. I've learned a lot. We'll do a series that we know is safe, which was Sonic. And I found a few more artists that some of them I knew, and some of them I just reached out to and said, hey, this is something I'm doing. Would you like to be a part of it? So at this point, I was still doing a lot of the community content while I was running the quote unquote record label side of things. And eventually, well, we put out Supersonic, and I think I was still doing interviews then, but you kind of noticed that the content, once I started the record label, the content for like the main channel just kind of started dwindling down. And that was mainly just due to time because, I work a full-time job, and it takes a lot of planning and coordination and talking with artists. And, I didn't have as much time to do interviews and all that other stuff or top picks. That was the first thing to go because, I would spend most of my free time, or at work, I would spend a lot of time just listening to remixes and then picking my favorite ones. But as I became more and more busy with the record label side of things, I no longer had the time to go through, 400 subscriptions every week and pick my favorites. So, or every month, you get my point.
It kind of became overwhelming.
Yeah, I had to pick. Eventually, I came to a point where I had to pick what I was going to do. Am I going to do the community content, or am I going to do like the more record label side of things, which is producing albums and then putting out albums? So I made the decision to switch to the record label, which, I mean, now in retrospect, I kind of see that may have been premature in some ways, and I'll explain why. I have a lot of talented artists on GameLark. I really do. And I'm beyond indebted to the people that put the time and effort into these tracks and into these albums. But the funny thing about Supersonic is we did pretty well with that album, in my opinion. We sold around 150 copies. And that was the first album that we actually had in stores. So I'm thinking all of my sales projections are based off of that. So all my make-back percentages are, what do you call it? My mind is blanking right now. But what's the word, like your break even points. All my break even points were based off Supersonic sales, sort of. I'm a terrible businessman. Let's put that out there right now. I lost money on every single album we've put out, including Volume 1. I have never made money back from these albums. I will probably never make the money back. And that's fine, because when it was a hobby and it was just for fun, it's not a concern. But now, like I said, I'm about to have a kid. I have to look at finances a little differently. I can't afford to spend like $400 every 3 months on something that I know I won't get the money back on. You know what I mean? Still, at that point, I knew the basic rate for an album was about $200 for mastering and about $200 for album art, around there. And that's not even including marketing calls like Facebook ads and Twitter ads and all that stuff. So you could see it was starting to get expensive, because you need album art, because you want people, that's the first thing people see is album art, and it has to be good. So 150 to 250 is what I've spent before. For mastering, 150 to 200 is what I've spent. And mastering is important because you want to make sure the album sounds as professional as possible if people are going to be spending their money on it.
Right.
So we teamed up with Materia for the next album. I had been in talks with Sebastian because of Music at Gaming Festival that I attended at the beginning of this year, and it was awesome. And then we put out Versus. I have to be very careful how I say this. Versus was a challenging record. That is the best way to put it.
You told me some of this off the record, so I know a bit of this.
We had the original album artist, the person that was designing the cover, drop out the day we needed the artwork. I won't name names because I don't want to throw shade, but still. We had issues with other things, like just basically everything that went wrong everything that could go wrong went wrong for that album. So that was stressing me out. That was a stressful album, but I thought, you know what, we'll get through it. We'll go on to the next album. We'll just Mox came out and I was super happy with the music. And I realized, when I found out in July that we were having a kid, and my wife and I were going to have a baby. So I kind of felt guilty for spending as much money as I did on all this stuff. Again, I'm not going to give a specific amounts because I don't want to, I feel like that might be, I don't know, imprudent or something. But I will say it like this. I have never, ever come close to making back money I've spent on this stuff, especially with Mox. So I just don't want people to think it's strictly like I'm leaving GameLark because it's not financially successful. That is one reason. It's the reason that because it affects how many albums we can put out. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. The story is unfolding in my mind as I'm telling it. So Mox mixtape came out. I paid a promotional company to handle the promotions, do press releases. I personally spent about 30 to 40 to 50 hours contacting fan sites, Final Fantasy fan sites, general gaming fan sites, contacting people on Twitter. And I was fairly successful. It was shared around, but we got lucky with Supersonic, and I didn't realize how lucky we got until it was too late. And then I was like, oh crap, like all these calculations that I've been thinking, okay, this is how the future albums will sell, was completely wrong. And that's the finance part of it. Like that's the part that I was saying, that the only reason that's important, it's not important solely for the reason that like, oh, he's in it to make money. No, again, as I've explained, I've never made money off this and never will, but it affects how many albums we can do, right? So that's kind of the crux of the issue. I also need to backpedal a little bit because this comes back. I was originally, at the beginning of the year, maybe February or March, I was trying to get back into writing because I was like, well, GameLark's doing well, but I really miss writing, and I'm going to try and do both. Did not work. So essentially, I put all my eggs in one basket and said, I'm going to go with GameLark. I don't have time to do both. Just before anyone asks, why can't you do both? Writing takes a lot of time. You must know this. You write for Comics First. You understand that it's, especially when you're doing creative writing, and I'm trying to write books, you have to spend a ton of time planning it out, doing characters, writing, doing drafts, editing, all this other stuff. So to get back to the point, there was 1 week that basically what happened was, I found out that I was going to be on a business trip for 25 days straight. And I was going to be working probably over 12 hours a day, probably 7 days a week. Okay. So I was like, crap. I had plans to release a Patreon and all this other stuff to try and help offset some of these costs, to help, alleviate the fact that I didn't want to be spending so much money in the future on each album up front, with the album cover and mastering. So it's just kind of like I panic. I mean, there was like a whole day I was at work. My coworker's like, "Dude, you seem really down today." I was like, "Yeah," because I feel like I don't know what to do now. I feel like I'm just kind of screwed. Like this is really going to make an impact on GameLark, and that mood kind of continued throughout the week. But then I had a conversation with artists before Mogs. Basically, I threw everything I could into the album, and I said this is kind of make or break it time. I let it be known to people that this is the time where either we start doing well, and it's not just the money thing; it's just the sense that this is going somewhere, right? Or I may just have to stop doing it. And so maybe it is time to just I don't want to do this if my heart's not in it, and it's just not. And then I was like, well, what have I learned from this? I mean, if I'm giving this up, right, and I've just decided it's time to move on, you know, the biggest crux of it, the biggest reason I want to leave is because I've spent all this time and all this energy and all this effort, and even though I've enjoyed Gamelock for mostly every second, or mostly every second, I should say, it's not really ultimately what I wanted to be doing. The writing I put on the back burner thinking, we'll see how far GameLark can go, and maybe GameLark will lead to something where I can be doing that full time, right? And then I'll bring back writing as a hobby. I don't think that that's going to happen. And so maybe that was a wrong thing to do in the beginning, to put writing on the back burner, to do this to see where it went. But I was having fun with it, and I didn't know where it was going to go. But now I just kind of feel like, well, this has run its course, and I can't keep putting this, writing thing off forever, because the one thing that I've really learned from the video game cover community is that it's, with writing, there's always this stigma of, don't put your work out there until it's perfect. And it's just, you have to make this great impression. You have to, if you're trying to be a professional writer, you need to craft the most, awesome, life-changing book. And then that's how you're going to build your audience. And you'll put it out, you'll get it on at least this is my impression. Back when I was writing, that's the way I thought you had to do it. You can't start building an audience before you have a book. Didn't make any sense. But now I realize a lot of these people that are following YouTube cover artists, YouTube musicians, they want to be there for the journey, right? So my thinking is, right, what I've learned is, why not apply all the things I've learned from GameLark and put it to my real passion, which is storytelling. I've always loved storytelling. That's kind of the point, is like, I was putting all this time and effort and energy into GameLark. It kind of just didn't pan out the way I wanted it to. And I'm like, well, it makes no sense to be spending all my time doing this when it's not even my biggest passion, which is storytelling. So I was like, yeah, there's no reason to be doing this now, because when it started, I was only doing a couple hours a week. Towards the end, especially with Mogs, and when we were getting ready to release it, it was anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week. It was essentially a part-time job. So, man, I feel like I've been talking too much. But the point is,
cool. I mean, if I could
please
give some advice, and it feels weird trying to give you advice, because I mean, it's not like I'm all that successful or anything. But one thing I've learned about myself, and something that I kind of get the sense of from you, is that the two of us we're men of many passions.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff we're interested in.
And that makes it tough.
It does make it tough. And because there's so much stuff we want to talk about. There's so much stuff we want to experience, so much stuff we want to do. And what I've realized with what I've found in my channel is a way for me to focus all of my different passions and kind of synthesize it into something that, for some reason, people like to watch. And I guess my advice for you is to try and do something similar. To try and take what your passions are, like, writing, music, video games, and create a channel where, you can be free to talk about all of that stuff, to engage in all of that stuff. And, for me, I found all that through video games, because it's kind of a crossroads between so many of our different passions. You know what I mean? Like writing, storytelling, history, culture, music. Even, in some of the more, intelligent, quote unquote, game stuff as deep as philosophy and politics. And it's a way for you to kind of synthesize all of your thoughts into something productive and something that people are going to want to enjoy watching. Right. So what I would say for you is, because you love writing, and I understand that, and I do too, and you love music, and I understand that. And I feel like, especially because you've told me that you've done, several other channels beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the problem, quote unquote, is that each of these channels is maybe a bit too focused on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I know that may sound like weird advice, but when you're someone like us who's into so many things, maybe you just need to open yourself up a bit more. Make something that's, where you can combine all these things that you like. So again, for me, like, I just have this weird little channel where I play video games, talk about them. I talk about music a bit. I, talk about storytelling in video games. I've found a way to kind of synthesize the stuff I like into a coherent, focused channel.
Sure.
So I guess my advice to you is to maybe do the same thing. Like, maybe, play some video games, talk about storytelling, talk about what
I'm going to jump in.
Combine that all into your channel, which focuses on storytelling.
Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. But it's not going to be with the GameLark channel, because that channel is specifically for game music, and it would feel weird. But what you just said is literally my plan, which is to create this new channel called Psycho Journey. Follow me at YouTube.com/C/Psycho
That's
Journey.
a little close to my name, man.
No.
I don't know how I feel about that.
No, but you're absolutely right. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a channel. My goal moving forward is I want to be a storyteller. Like you said, the problem is people like us, we have so many passions. And, this channel, GameLark, was a great combination of music and gaming, which I've always loved game music, and I've always loved music in general. I've always loved gaming in general. But I could never get that writing pulled into it because there's just no way to do it. I thought about it, and there just was no way to bring in the writing for it. But
yeah,
I'm actually kind of doing what you do a little bit with Psychotrip, which is the YouTube channel. My goal going forward is I'm going to have a channel where it's kind of like a journey. Like, hey, join me on this journey. I have a main series that I'm writing. It's a mythological fantasy series, but also I'm going to be doing short stories occasionally. I'm going to be talking about storytelling and characters and world design, like basically what you do. I just want to have a channel where people get to know what I like, so that before I put out any work, like publish anything, or if I ever get published, people can get to know me, because I think that it's never too early to start building an audience, to start trying to connect with people. That's what I've learned from GameLark. When I stopped writing, it was because of two reasons. One, writing is really solitary, and I just didn't feel like I was improving. And two, I didn't really have a community. And with GameLark, I found this community of really awesome and really like the video game remix community I'm talking about. I found this community of very supportive artists that were trying to help each other get better. So I'm going to look for that, and I'm going to try and you have to put yourself out there, essentially. Like, I realize that I need to start putting myself out there now, because the whole problem with putting things on the quote unquote on the back burner is that this is something writing, like you said, we have many different passions: gaming, music, blah, 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 right? But gaming, I couldn't do gaming all the time. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be like a professional gamer. I obviously can't make music, but writing and storytelling, that is by far the thing that I'm the most passionate about. So it does not make sense to have that on the back burner anymore. And I've kind of feel like I've had the journey with GameLark, and now I'm able to have the right mindset going into writing again, which is, if I start doing what you said, try and combine my interests by having a YouTube channel where I talk about stories that I like, stories that I don't like, from video games and music. Even music has storytelling to it as well. So that's kind of just it's like you said, stop trying to be focused on one thing. It's just kind of all encompassing, and it's going to be, I guess, the channel will be like Alan Brash, I guess. And I'm going to post a link to it in this video. But if you want to see like what inspires me, like my creative process, that's kind of what it is. It's for me personally, so I can go back and look at like, oh, this was how I was feeling at this point. And I remember when I was having trouble with this character, this plot point. And it's also to start allowing people to see, because, when people, it's the same thing as putting out an album without having an audience for a video game cover artist. You put out the covers, right, to build your audience so that people know what your sound is like, what games you like. For me, it's going to be short stories and just these video essays, kind of like what you do. So that if I get to a point where a book is ready to go, then I have people that know, hey, I like this dude. I get what he's trying to do with this book. I'm going to support him. It makes more sense. Like, you're kind of Otherwise, you're kind of putting the cart before the horse, which is you're trying to build an audience by selling a book. I've had friends that have put stuff online, writers, and it just doesn't go anywhere because they don't have the audience. So I hope that doesn't sound cynical, but it's just I am just ready.
It doesn't sound cynical at all.
I am just ready to get. I want to get back to writing because I'm like, if I only have, I'm about to have a kid. I'm not going to have as much time even that I have now. So if I have less time and I have to pick what's the most important thing to me to continue doing what's the thing I'm most passionate about, it's going to be writing. I want to take it off the back burner. That's really the TLDR version is that, I it sounds funny because it's kind of like this very awkward relationship I've had with writing where we take breaks. Like when I was in college, I wasn't writing very much, but when I got out, I started writing again. I took a break for GameLark because I felt like I hit a wall, but now I have all these other skills and knowledge that I've acquired. I'm ready to get back. I'm excited. So
I'm excited too, dude. This
Psycho
all comes
Journey.
back to,
that's my new channel.
this all comes back to that old cliche, you have to do what you love.
Yeah.
Because, like, for me in Psychotrip, like, I would do that even if I didn't make any money. And I really don't make any money off of that. But, I mean, I would do that regardless. I do that because I can't not do it. You know what I mean? I'm somebody who is very attention hungry. And I'm not very shy about that. I'm a very attention hungry person. And, I have a lot of ideas that I just like to share with people. So like I can't not make Psychotrip. That's something that I'll do for the rest of my life, no matter what happens. And you kind of come to a point in your life when things stop being about, okay, I need to make money just for the sake of making money, and more, okay, I need to make money. I need to do all these separate things so that they can feed back into what I really love.
I want to feel some kind of fulfillment from it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's really what it is. And I would feel more fulfilled knowing that this is content that I'm producing, that I'm getting an audience for this content rather than getting an audience for other people's content, if that even makes sense. You know what I mean?
No, that makes total sense. Because I mean, like, there's a certain satisfaction you get when you feel like you've built something.
Right.
Psychotrip is a small channel. I have like 1,400 subscribers, okay? And I don't mean to diminish any of my subscribers. I mean, that's still fucking stunning to me that anybody subscribes to my channel. But I know Psychotrip is small. And I have a lot of ambition to grow it. But even as it is right now, just knowing that I've built that gives you a certain level of satisfaction that I've never felt before.
Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully, I mean, I don't know how many people listen to this whole thing, but hopefully that gives you some insight into why I've decided to step down. And hopefully if you're interested in, I will link to my channel. I'll have a video up there explaining what I'm going to be doing, probably like monthly short stories and just trying to improve as a writer and try and just, I don't know, like you said, find some fulfillment in what I'm doing creatively and get back to it. I mean, like I said, I spent years. I've written 3 or 4 drafts over 300 pages for this mythology story, and it's like always been rattling around in my mind, and it's just like ready to get out again. So let's unleash the beast. That's so corny.
That's a good note to end on. But I mean, I guess the lesson to take from this is, again, you have to do what you love.
Yes.
And a lot of people, and I'm sure some of the people watching this are like you and me. They have so many different passions and interests, and they don't know how to translate that into something productive. And I guess all I can say is, specifically if you're making a YouTube channel, you're thinking about making a YouTube channel out of your passions, you need to think about what you really love doing and try to create a brand out of it. You know what I mean? Like, because for Psychotrip, my whole brand, my motto is a forum for all things fun and nerdy. And I made it that because I want it to be something kind of broad, maybe a bit too broad, but still something that has an identity to it. So if you're somebody who has a lot of different passions and a lot of things that you like to do, you can still synthesize that into something productive, and you can still find an audience. So I guess that's kind of the lesson to take from this. Do what you love and you'll be happy. I guess.
And not to step on your final point, but I wanted the what I want people to take away from this, and this is something I wish I had learned a little bit sooner. I learned it before GameLark, and that's why I knew I would never continue doing this if I didn't have my heart in it, because I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to do something that doesn't pan out the way I want it to, and I don't continue doing. And like I said, I have had experience with successful YouTube channels before. Not that I ran personally, but that I helped a friend with. And so it was tough, like recovering from that, like feeling like I was part of something and then not part of it. Like, don't be afraid to try. There are times, if you're giving up just because something is difficult, then that's one thing. But if you're giving up because you're like, my heart's not in it, it may take you a few tries before you find what you feel like you're really supposed to do. It's definitely been that way for me. I've had many different projects, but all I've learned is dust yourself off, take a little bit of time, start on the next one, because we can't help it. We're driven to it. So
yeah, I mean, if I'll just leave it on this. If you guys saw the first videos I made on my channel,
I want to find them.
I would have lost so many subscribers.
Do you have them still?
I still do. A lot of them are private, but I can show them to you if you want. They're terrible. I started off because, I mean, we're going over time now, but I'll just say this. I started off because I'm inspired by people that you wouldn't expect me to be inspired by. Like, I'm very inspired by Markiplier, Nostalgia Critic, people who are much more bombastic and obnoxious than. I mean, I'm a very obnoxious person when the mic's off, but I have to temper myself a lot because I am an obnoxious person. But yes, if you saw my original videos, I was going for something totally different. I was going for like I still have the same basic idea of, okay, I want this to be kind of a place for creativity where we can talk about, games and writing and all that cool shit. Mm-hmm. But I was going for a much more like freeform let's play thing, and it was terrible. Oh my God. I had a Soma playthrough that was just complete bullshit. I had this whole little like mini podcast thing, which I still think is funny, but I know that the vast majority of my viewers will be like, what the fuck, Trip? Who is this person?
Put some stuff up for April Fools or something. Be like, this is what it once was.
That would be a great idea.
But I guess.
But anyway, yeah. So
to wrap it up, I just want to say thank you for anyone that's listening and was a fan of GameLark. I want to say thank you for basically joining me for that journey, and hopefully you're excited to start the new one. But one thing ends, another thing starts. That's the way I look at it. So in any case, wrap us up, Trip.
All right. Well, I am Trip of the channel Psychotrip, and like I said, we talk about video games, writing, music, and all that fun nerdy shit. And my friend here, I will always call him Lark from now until the end of time, but I will let him have the final outro.
All right, y'all. This is the Alan, aka formerly known as GameLark, and thanks for listening.
See you guys next time.